What's up guys, I'm here with the PokerWeasel.com organizer. We're going to be taking a look at the Volume Planner tab. This is a fairly straightforward and highly customizable volume planner. It allows us to schedule when we're going to put in our volume at the poker table and also make sure that it doesn't conflict with other important life events or responsibilities that we have. Step number one in most cases is going to be defining the range of timings that we schedule our events in. For example, most of us probably start our day in the morning. Let's choose 9 and 10 as our first slot. So we can see everything that's input into these drop-down boxes. You can see the days of the week at the top will apply to this particular time slot between 9 and 10 in the morning. Let's say every day we're going to put in a study session between 9 and 10. We can see that there are already categories there for us: sleep, work, study, grind, theory, other. That might be enough for most of us, but we'll have a look at how we can customize these values here a little bit later. Then let's imagine that from 10 onwards we have some real life work commitments. Let's say between 10 and 12. Let's choose work. You get the idea. If it's different on any of the other days, we can always choose something different from the drop-down box. For example, I imagine at the weekend, we might have something else we want to do after our study session, assuming we don't work at the weekends. Over on the right-hand side, there's a second week as well. Realistically, not everyone is going to operate on a week-by-week schedule. So I often find that having two different types of schedule might make sense. So on certain types of weeks, for example, perhaps we work every other week. So on week one, the week that we work, we're going to have a certain type of schedule. Whereas on the other type of week where we perhaps take the time off work, we're going to have a different, perhaps more poker intensive schedule as a result. We get to 12. Now let's imagine that we want to input lunch between 12 and 1. Now we have a couple of options here. One thing we could obviously do is we could just choose other and say that's lunchtime, and that's fine. We know that other means lunch in this context. However, let's say that we want our own category for meal times, or it could be any other event that we think is going to benefit from its own category in this drop-down box, and we want to hard code it as part of the sheet rather than just choosing the other option by default. So how do we do this? Well, let's move the sheet down slightly and you'll see in Google Sheets we have this data drop-down box at the top. We're going to data, then data validation. And we can see here the list of items that are included as part of the options in the drop-down box. Now, before we modify this, we just want to make sure the correct set of cells are selected. One way of doing this is we can click the Select Data Range box, and obviously this applies to all of the cells in yellow here. So let's just select all of those. Let's choose OK. Now we can add any other categories to this list. Let's start off by inputting a comma. And then let's type lunch for our lunch category. We'll then choose dinner as well for a separate category. I'm just choosing these as examples. It may be that you want to specify what type of work you're doing, for example. So here we have work, but work is sometimes more than just a binary. We're either working or not working. There are different facets to our work. For example, you might want to focus on one project on a certain day, another project on another day, in which case it might help to have work broken down into several categories. That way you can use this particular sheet not just as a volume planner, but you can actually create a calendar for your entire life where we plan our work activities, but also we plan our poker activities as part of the same calendar. So let's choose save. Now when we go back to our drop-down box, we should see we have the option for lunch and dinner, which we've added. So I'll add lunch here. You can also modify the colors of these if you want. We'll just leave them blank for now. Then let's decide that in the afternoon we're going to be grinding. Now we don't have to break it down into our categories. We can simply say, as an example, that between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. we're going to grind. So let's choose 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. and let's choose grind. There are shortcuts as well. For example, you could just drag along like this after selecting the bottom right of the cell. What I recommend for most players is that they create some kind of schedule, but not to assume initially that the schedule is definitely going to be perfect. example, right now we have a relatively intensive 4-hour session. Now that's okay if you think that you can handle it, but what I recommend is to trial the system for a week or two and then make adjustments, fine-tune it. Don't assume that just because we've tweaked some drop-down boxes in Google Sheets, that means the whole plan is going to be perfect and everything's going to come together. I've generally found for players that it's very easy for them when just clicking on drop-down boxes like this to convince themselves that they're going to play a 10-hour session every day, but when it actually comes down to it, it's too intensive. So one of the categories that I recommend you think about coding in is recreational time. In other words, when are you going to relax? Common mistake is players just fill 16 hours a day with work, study, and grinding activities, and they just assume that they don't need any downtime in between. And downtime is very important for poker players. At the very least, we need that relaxation time for mindset regeneration. It's virtually impossible to play 12-hour plus days, 7 days a week, and expect our mindset to be able to take that. It will snap at some point. So think about this as a first draft once it's done. Try the system, see which areas we can make tweaks in after a couple of weeks. If we keep doing that iteratively over a few months, at the end of it, we're going to end up having the perfect grind schedule, which allows us to maintain a healthy mindset while also maximizing our volume and at the same time making sure we keep up with work and other responsibilities. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoy the volume planner. Remember, you can pick up the entire organizer sheet at www.pokerweasel.com.